At 29, the morning Robert Blackwell introduced me as CEO, calling me son, I saw my parents' faces fall, their jaws visibly dropping. For years, they had casually dismissed my aspirations in business as mere childish whims, all while lavishing attention and praise upon my sister Natalie's every achievement. "Why can't you be more like her?" was a constant, favored refrain in our household. Watching their expressions shift from complacent mockery to outright shock that morning was a moment that validated every sleepless night, every struggle. To anyone watching this who feels unseen, whose dreams are discounted by those closest to them, I hope you know your journey of vindication is just beginning. Share your own story below. My entrepreneurial path started early. At the age of 8, I sold my first handmade friendship bracelet. The buyer wasn't a relative offering pity support, but our neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. She found me on our front lawn, my creations displayed in a shoebox filled with colorful string. "How much?" she inquired, pointing to a blue and yellow braid. $2, I answered without hesitation, having meticulously calculated my material costs and a reasonable profit. Mrs. Henderson raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed by my straightforwardness. She handed over 2 crisp dollar bills, fastened the bracelet onto her wrist, and offered words that would echo for years. "You've got a good head for business, Olivia." That small transaction ignited a spark within me. By 10, I had expanded my endeavors to include a neighborhood dog walking service, complete with hand-drawn business cards and a detailed scheduling system, maintained in my bright Lisa Frank notebook. While other children occupied themselves with video games or television after school, I was steadily constructing my own small empire, one dog at a time. My parents, William and Catherine Parker, were figures of professional success in our affluent community. My father performed complex surgeries at the esteemed Lakeside Medical Center. My mother was a partner at a prominent law firm, winning high-profile cases. They embodied career ambition, but their focus never extended to mine. My sister, Natalie, for years my senior, was the perfect embodiment of their values. She maintained a flawless 4.0 GPA, played violin in the youth symphony, and volunteered at the very hospital where our father worked. Her bedroom walls were a gallery of academic accolades, science fair awards, and photographs with state officials, tangible proof of accomplishments that made my parents beam with pride. Announcements like, "Natalie's science project is moving to nationals," would punctuate our family dinners, often accompanied by a celebratory toast from Dad. "That's our girl." My own bedroom, however, told a different story. My walls were adorned with magazine clippings of successful female executives, charts meticulously tracking my modest business earnings, and a vision board filled with images of office towers and corporate logos. When I proudly showed my mother the first $50 I'd earned from dog walking, she offered a thin smile. "That's nice, honey," she said dismissively. "A cute little hobby." The sting of that trivialization was sharp, but it didn't deter me. At 12, I had saved enough capital to invest in supplies for a homemade lip balm business, selling my products to classmates and their parents. One evening at dinner, brimming with excitement, I declared, "Someday I'm going to run my own company." The table erupted in immediate laughter. My father nearly choked on his wine. "A company?" he sputtered. "Oh, sweetie," my mother chuckled, exchanging amused glances with Dad. "Let's focus on practical careers for you. Perhaps nursing, teaching, something stable." I insisted on my aptitude for business, my cheeks flushing hot, but Natalie, ever eager to align herself with our parents, chimed in. "It's adorable that you think selling lip balm is running a business." My father patted my hand condescendingly. "When you're older," he explained, "you'll understand the difference between hobbies and careers." Their persistent dismissal only solidified my determination. I retreated further into my burgeoning entrepreneurial world, finding refuge in spreadsheets and profit margins. The only adult who seemed to regard me with seriousness was our other neighbor, Mrs. Garrison, a retired accountant. She found me on the porch one afternoon, meticulously calculating expenses. "You're tracking your costs properly," she observed, peering over my shoulder. "Most adults don't even do that." Mrs. Garrison became my first genuine supporter, patiently teaching me fundamental accounting principles and lending me essential books on business. When I devised a highly efficient neighborhood lawn mowing schedule, optimized based on yard size and equipment logistics, she nodded in approval. "You've got a natural talent for systems optimization," she remarked, using terminology that lent my efforts legitimacy. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." High school mirrored the familiar family dynamic. I excelled in economics and business courses, joined Future Business Leaders of America, and won the school's entrepreneurship competition with a detailed plan for an eco-friendly delivery service. The awards ceremony, however, fell on the same night as Natalie's piano recital. My parents didn't even consider attending my event. "You understand, right?" my mother said, adjusting Dad's tie as they prepared to leave. "It's Natalie's final recital before college applications." I nodded mechanically, having anticipated nothing different. That night, sitting alone at the awards ceremony, save for Mrs. Garrison, I accepted my certificate with a practiced smile, a familiar ache residing in my chest. Returning to an empty house, I placed the certificate on the refrigerator next to Natalie's recital program. By morning, the magnets had been rearranged, my certificate pushed to the side, barely visible. "Did you see I won first place?" I asked my mother over breakfast. "Oh, that's nice, dear," she replied without looking up from her legal briefs. "Did you know Natalie got a standing ovation last night? The director said she's the most talented pianist they've had in a decade." I removed my certificate from the refrigerator and added it to a growing box of achievements in my room. A silent collection of accomplishments unwitnessed and uncelebrated by my family. That box would eventually accompany me to college, a tangible reminder of both my achievements and the persistent void of recognition. The college acceptance letters arrived within days of each other. Natalie's, from Cornell University's pre-med program, arrived first, a thick envelope displayed prominently on the kitchen table, adorned with celebratory flowers like a small shrine. "Full ride to the pre-med program," Dad announced at an impromptu dinner party thrown in her honor, following right in my footsteps. When my own letter arrived from State University, offering a partial scholarship to their business program, my mother barely glanced at it. "At least it's something," she conceded, sliding it into the mail pile, "though I still think you should reconsider nursing." That evening, I calculated costs on my laptop. The partial scholarship covered tuition but nothing else. My parents had made it clear they would not fund what they considered an impractical degree. Meanwhile, they had already arranged Natalie's housing and meal plan for all 4 years at Cornell, purchased her a new MacBook Pro, and offered weekend trips home whenever she desired. "Business is risky," my father explained when I questioned the disparity. "Medicine is secure. We're investing in certainty." That summer, I worked double shifts at the mall and took on freelance bookkeeping jobs for local businesses. By August, I had accumulated enough for my first semester's housing and books, plus a small emergency fund. The morning I departed for college, my mother gave me a quick hug before checking her watch. "We need to get going soon to help Natalie move into her apartment," she explained. "It's a 6-hour drive to Ithaca." "I'll be fine," I assured her, loading my second-hand Honda Civic with all my possessions. No one offered to accompany me on my own 3-hour drive to State University. College became my liberation. I thrived in my business classes, maintaining a 3.9 GPA while working 20 hours weekly at the campus bookstore, and another 15 as a virtual assistant for a small marketing firm. Each semester brought its financial hurdles, but also a growing confidence in my abilities. Professor Jennifer Blake noticed me during my sophomore year, when I challenged her assessment of a case study after class. Instead of offense, she invited me to her office hours. "You identified inefficiencies in that supply chain that most MBA students miss," she noted. "Have you considered graduate school?" Professor Blake became the mentor I had always longed for. She recommended books, introduced me to industry contacts, and relentlessly pushed me to refine my analytical skills. When I developed an innovative supply chain management software for her advanced logistics class, she urged me to patent it. "This has commercial potential," she insisted, guiding me through the university's technology transfer office. "You're thinking at a level beyond your years." Meanwhile, visits home grew increasingly strained. A tense Thanksgiving during my junior year erupted into an argument when my father questioned my career aspirations. "When are you going to outgrow this rebellious phase?" he asked over pumpkin pie. "You're still young enough to switch to a sensible field." "It's not a phase," I countered, my knife and fork poised above my untouched dessert. "I'm top of my class. I've already got companies interested in my software prototype." "Playing with computers," my mother sighed, exchanging a familiar look with Dad. Meanwhile, Natalie's been accepted for a prestigious research position. I left the table, escaping to my childhood bedroom, which now felt alien, filled with outdated posters and empty drawers. The next morning, I returned to campus a day early, sending a brief goodbye text rather than facing another breakfast defined by comparison. Senior year brought dual celebrations: Natalie's engagement to the son of my father's colleague, another doctor in training, and my own graduation with highest honors. The contrast was stark. Their engagement party featured catered food, professional photographers, and my father's tearful toast to his perfect daughter, finding her perfect match. My graduation ceremony invitation received a perfunctory response. "We'll try to make it," my mother said during our monthly phone call, "but Natalie's wedding planning is taking up most weekends." They didn't come. Professor Blake sat where my parents should have been, cheering loudly when I crossed the stage as valedictorian. Afterward, she hugged me tightly. "Their loss," she whispered. "The business world is gaining someone extraordinary." 2 weeks later, I packed everything I owned back into my Honda Civic, this time heading to Atlanta for a junior analyst position at a supply chain technology firm. I didn't inform my parents I was moving until I had already signed the lease on a small apartment with 2 roommates. "Atlanta?" My mother sounded genuinely surprised. "But that's so far." The geographical distance finally mirrored the emotional gap that had long existed. Months later, when my business school acceptance letter arrived, I debated whether to even share the news. Finally, I sent a group text to the family chat, a space usually dominated by wedding updates and highlights from Natalie's seemingly perfect life. "Got into the MBA program at Georgia Tech, starting next fall while working full-time." My mother replied, "That's nice, dear. Did you see Natalie's wedding invitations just came back from the printer?" My father added, "Unfortunately, we'll be too busy with the wedding that weekend to attend your graduation." I stared at my phone, a crushing realization dawning. They hadn't even attempted to check if the dates conflicted. They had simply assumed that anything concerning my life was secondary. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, pulled up my contact list, and set my parents' contact to do not disturb. The junior analyst position paid barely enough to cover my share of rent, student loan payments, and a steady diet of ramen noodles. My tiny bedroom doubled as my office, a folding table serving as both desk and dining area. The company's fluorescent-lit cubicle farm buzzed with constant activity as I analyzed logistics data and identified inefficiencies in client systems. "Parker, need these reports by 5. My manager would bark, dropping another stack of spreadsheets on my desk at 4. I regularly stayed until 8 or 9, fiercely determined to prove my worth despite being the youngest on the team. Meanwhile, Natalie's life unfolded like a meticulously curated Instagram feed. Her wedding photos showcased a fairy tale ceremony at the country club, my parents beaming proudly beside her, their gift to the newlyweds, a down payment on a charming colonial in an exclusive neighborhood. "Just a little something to get you started," my father proclaimed proudly, his voice thick with emotion, in a video I watched from my roommate's second-hand couch, laptop balanced on my knees. The family group chat became a shrine to Natalie's achievements, her new position at the prestigious Riverside Medical Center, the designer furniture filling her 4-bedroom house, weekend brunches with mom and dad, who apparently had no difficulty making the 3-hour drive to visit her regularly. My own occasional updates went largely unacknowledged. When I shared news of completing my first major client analysis, saving them significant operational costs, the message sat like a stone in a flowing river, creating no ripple before disappearing beneath Natalie's announcement of redecorating her home office. 6 months into the job, I earned my first promotion to full analyst. It came with a modest raise that allowed me to occasionally splurge on fresh vegetables. I called my mother, genuinely excited to share the good news. "That's wonderful, honey," she said, her voice distracted. "Oh, but wait until you hear Natalie's news. She's pregnant. We're going to be grandparents." The conversation immediately pivoted to Natalie's pregnancy announcement, nursery plans, and my mother's upcoming shopping trip to help choose baby furniture. My promotion became a footnote, mentioned in passing to my father, who had picked up the extension. "Oh, Olivia got promoted at that computer job," she said offhandedly. "Anyway, we're thinking the baby shower should be in June, before it gets too hot." After that call, anxiety attacks began ambushing me at unexpected moments in the grocery store, calculating whether I could afford both toilet paper and breakfast cereal. During presentations, when senior staff interrupted with questions tinged with condescension. Late at night, staring at my ceiling and wondering if I had made a catastrophic life choice. "Maybe they're right," I whispered to my empty room. "Maybe this is just stubborn pride, not actual talent." Those thoughts grew louder when I scrolled through social media. Natalie's baby gender reveal party, attended by extended family who hadn't spoken to me in years. The nursery painted by my father over a long weekend. My mother organizing a baby shower with 60 guests at the country club. "Maybe if you'd chosen a real career like your sister," my mother said during one of our increasingly rare phone conversations, "you'd be settling down too instead of working all these crazy hours for who knows what." The comment lodged in my chest like a splinter. That night, I actually researched nursing programs, wondering if capitulation might finally earn their approval. The application form sat open on my laptop for hours before I ultimately closed the tab, my hands shaking with a mixture of anger and resolve. The next day I met Tyler Williams. He sat next to me at a coffee shop where I was reviewing spreadsheets during my lunch break. "Supply chain optimization?" he asked, nodding toward my screen. I tensed, expecting mockery. "Yes." "Impressive. I'm in manufacturing technology. Those distribution models you're working on look sophisticated." His genuine interest was so unfamiliar that I initially mistrusted it. But over subsequent coffee shop encounters, Tyler proved to be sincerely fascinated by my work. He asked intelligent questions, offered relevant suggestions, and most shockingly, believed in my career path without qualification. "You've got a natural talent for systems thinking," he said over dinner on our third date. "That's rare and valuable." The validation was intoxicating. For the first time, I found myself talking freely about my ambitions without bracing for dismissal. Tyler listened attentively as I described my vision for integrating AI into supply chain management. "You're going to revolutionize the industry," he said simply, as if stating an obvious fact. Our relationship progressed alongside my growing confidence at work. When Christmas approached, Tyler invited me to join his family celebration, understanding when I explained my reluctance to go home. "They've made their priorities clear," I said, showing him the family gift exchange details. Everyone had drawn names, except somehow I had been assigned to buy for a distant cousin while receiving nothing in return. An oversight, my mother had called it when I inquired. I went home anyway, determined to maintain some semblance of family connection. The holiday unfolded predictably. Natalie's 5-month baby bump received constant attention. Her husband, James, shared medical residency stories that my father enthusiastically elaborated on. My mother served Natalie's favorite foods. The living room overflowed with gifts for the expectant parents. Christmas morning brought the culmination. My father leading a blindfolded Natalie to the driveway where a brand new SUV sat with an enormous bow. "For our daughter and grandchild's safety," he announced proudly, as my mother filmed the reveal. My gift arrived later, a $50 gift card to a chain restaurant with the generic message "Happy Holidays," printed inside a mass-produced card. No personalization, no acknowledgement of my life or interests. That night, I booked an early flight back to Atlanta, claiming work obligations. Nobody questioned it or tried to convince me to stay. As the plane lifted off, I made a silent promise to myself. This would be my last attempt to fit into a family picture where I was clearly considered an unwelcome appendage. 3 months after the Christmas debacle, I noticed a critical flaw in our company's logistics tracking system while analyzing quarterly performance data. The inefficiency was costing clients thousands in unnecessary transportation expenses, yet had somehow evaded detection by senior analysts. I spent 2 weekends developing a comprehensive improvement plan, complete with implementation timelines and projected savings. When I presented my findings at the monthly staff meeting, our department head barely looked up from his phone. "Interesting approach, Parker," he said dismissively. "We'll consider it for next year's system updates." His dismissal felt painfully familiar. As I gathered my presentation materials, resigned to being overlooked again, A voice spoke from the back of the room. "I'd like to see more details on this proposal." The room fell silent. Robert Blackwell, CEO of Black Tech Solutions and a visiting executive considering a partnership with our firm, leaned forward in his chair. "Can you walk me through your methodology again?" For the next 20 minutes, I explained my analysis while Robert asked increasingly specific questions. By the end, my department head was frantically taking notes, suddenly discovering urgent interest in my work. After the meeting, Robert handed me his business card. "My office tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring your complete data set." The next day, after grilling me with questions that tested the limits of my knowledge, Robert leaned back in his chair. "Your current company is wasting your talent. I need someone with your analytical skills at Black Tech. Junior Operations Director position. Interested?" 2 weeks later, I started at Black Tech Solutions with double my previous salary and an actual office with a door. When I shared the news via an obligatory family video call, the response was predictably tepid. "Is this company stable?" my father asked skeptically. "Startups can be risky." "It's a 20-year-old company with international operations," I corrected. "Well, sounds like you got lucky," my mother concluded. "Right place, right time." "Luck had nothing to do with it," I countered, immediately regretting engaging in the familiar pattern. "Speaking of good news," my mother continued, without acknowledging my comment, "Natalie's been offered a flexible schedule at the hospital after the baby comes. They value her so much they're creating a special position just for her." I muted myself momentarily to avoid saying something I'd regret, unmuting just in time to hear my father proudly describing the nursery furniture he'd assembled over the weekend. My new position at Black Tech consumed my attention in the best possible way. Robert challenged me constantly, pushing me to think beyond conventional approaches to supply chain management. I thrived under his mentorship, quickly earning the respect of my team through results rather than rhetoric. 6 months in, I spotted a major inefficiency in our global shipping protocol. Working nights and weekends, I developed an AI-driven solution that could predict inventory needs based on multiple variables, dramatically reducing waste and transit times. When I presented it to Robert, he studied the proposal silently for long minutes. "This could save us millions annually," he finally said. "Implement it immediately and assemble a team. This is exactly why I brought you here." Within weeks, my solution was showing dramatic results. Robert promoted me to Senior Director of Operations Innovation, an entirely new position created to leverage my specific talents. Meanwhile, Natalie had given birth to a beautiful baby boy, instantly transforming my parents into doting grandparents who rearranged their work schedules to provide childcare 3 days weekly. Their social media accounts, once showcasing professional accomplishments, now overflowed with baby photos and proud grandparent declarations. During another obligatory video call, my mother interrogated me about my personal life. "You're not getting any younger, Olivia," she said while bouncing my nephew on her lap. "All work and no family makes for a lonely life." "I'm building something important," I replied, "and I'm only 27. "Your sister managed both a career and family," my father chimed in. "It's about priorities." "My priority is becoming the best in my field," I stated firmly. My mother sighed dramatically. "We just want you to be happy." "I am happy," I insisted. "My work fulfills me." The skeptical glances they exchanged spoke volumes about their disbelief in my chosen path to happiness. That summer, a family reunion brought the tension to new heights. Relatives I hadn't seen in years greeted me with a standard, "Still working at that computer place?" While fawning over Natalie's baby and medical career. At dinner, Uncle Steve asked about my job. Before I could answer, my father interjected. "Olivia just works in an office," he said dismissively. "But did you hear about Natalie's volunteer program? She's organizing a reading initiative for pediatric patients while on maternity leave. Always thinking of others." I excused myself early, claiming a work emergency. Sitting in my rental car outside the venue, I called Tyler, who had become my emotional anchor. "They'll never see me," I said, my voice cracking, "no matter what I achieve." "Then stop seeking their validation," he replied gently. "You know your worth." "I know your worth. Robert Blackwell clearly knows your worth. Isn't that enough?" His words resonated, but the ache persisted. I drove back to my hotel, opened my laptop, and buried myself in work until dawn, finding solace in the logical patterns of data, where emotional wounds couldn't follow. As I was checking out the next morning, my phone rang with Robert's distinctive tone. "Cancel whatever plans you have today," he said without preamble. "I need you back in Atlanta immediately. There's an opportunity we need to discuss. One that could change everything." The opportunity Robert mentioned turned out to be seismic. Over dinner at his private club, he revealed his intention to retire within 6 months. "The board is beginning the search for my replacement," he said, cutting precisely into his stake. "They're considering external candidates, but I've told them they'd be fools to overlook internal talent." He fixed me with his characteristic penetrating stare. "Specifically, you." I nearly choked on my water. "Me? I've only been with Black Tech for 2 years. And in that time," he continued, setting down his knife and fork, "you've revolutionized our operations, saved millions in costs, and developed proprietary systems our competitors can't match. Age and tenure are poor metrics for leadership potential. Results matter. Vision matters." The following weeks became a blur of preparation. Though not officially a candidate yet, Robert mentored me relentlessly, exposing me to aspects of the business I hadn't previously encountered: strategic planning sessions, investor relations, leadership development. Each new challenge exhilarated me, confirming I had finally found my true calling. Meanwhile, Natalie's seemingly perfect life was showing unexpected fractures. Late one night, my phone rang with her number. Something so unprecedented I immediately assumed an emergency. "James left," she sobbed without preamble. "He's been having an affair with a nurse. Says he feels trapped by family life." I listened in shock as my seemingly perfect sister's life imploded. The husband everyone adored had walked out, leaving her alone with a 6-month-old while still on partial maternity leave. Her financial situation, once secure, was suddenly precarious. "Mom and Dad don't know yet," she admitted. "I can't bear to tell them I failed." The irony wasn't lost on me, but compassion overrode petty satisfaction. "You haven't failed, Natalie," I said gently. "He failed you." Over subsequent weeks, Natalie's situation deteriorated further. When she finally told our parents, they immediately mobilized as expected. My mother took leave from her law practice to help with the baby. My father contacted his attorney friends about securing Natalie's financial interests. The family infrastructure that had never existed for me materialized instantly for her. What I hadn't anticipated was how their support for Natalie would translate into new pressure on me. "Your sister needs family right now," my mother insisted during an unexpected call. "Surely you can take some time off to come help." "I'm in the middle of the most important professional opportunity of my career," I explained. "The timing is impossible." "There are more important things than work, Olivia," my father interjected, apparently on speakerphone. "Family should come first." "That's interesting coming from you," I replied before I could censor myself. The silence that followed was brittle. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice cold. "I see. If you were half the daughter Natalie is, you'd understand the meaning of family loyalty." The statement hit like a physical blow. "I've sent money to help with her legal fees," I said quietly. "It's the support I can offer right now." I had been transferring significant portions of my salary to Natalie anonymously through a lawyer friend, ensuring she could afford proper representation without undermining her pride. Neither she nor my parents knew the source of this financial support. "Money isn't the same as showing up," my mother snapped before ending the call. The conversation left me shaken, but there was no time to dwell on family drama. Robert had officially announced his retirement, triggering the formal CEO selection process. Despite his advocacy, several board members expressed skepticism about my candidacy. "She's barely 30, I overheard one say before a preliminary interview. "No matter how talented, can she really lead a company of this size?" Robert's unwavering support became my foundation. During a crucial board meeting where my youth was being debated, he reportedly pounded the table. "She thinks like I do," he declared. "She's the son I never had. In all the ways that matter: vision, determination, unflinching honesty. If you want Black Tech to continue thriving, she's not just a good choice, she's the only choice." The board narrowed the candidates to three: myself, our current CFO, Bradley Thompson, and an external candidate from a competitor. The final decision would follow presentations where each candidate would outline their 5-year vision for the company. I worked obsessively on my presentation, sleeping barely 4 hours nightly. Every slide, every data point, every strategic initiative was scrutinized and refined dozens of times. Tyler brought food to my apartment, occasionally forcing me to take breaks, but he understood the magnitude of what I was pursuing. The night before the final presentation, as I was making last-minute adjustments, my father called. Seeing his name on my screen at 11 p.m. instantly triggered alarm. "Dad, is everything okay? Your mother's been in an accident," he said, his voice unnaturally tight. "She's in surgery now. You need to come home immediately." The world tilted sideways. "How serious is it?" "Serious enough that you need to be here," he replied. "Natalie's already on her way." I looked at my laptop screen, at the presentation scheduled for 9 a.m. that represented everything I'd worked toward. "I have my final CEO candidacy presentation tomorrow morning." "Your mother could be fighting for her life, Olivia," Dad said sharply. "Surely even you can put work aside for that." The implied comparison, the weaponizing of concern, stung, but I forced myself to focus. "I'll book the first flight after my presentation. It's only 90 minutes. I can be there by early afternoon. You choose work over family at a time like this." His voice rose. "You're no daughter of mine." He hung up, leaving me staring at my phone in shock. Tears blurred my vision as I tried calling back repeatedly, getting no answer. I finally reached Natalie, who answered in a whisper. "Mom's in surgery for a broken hip from a fall," she explained. "It's serious but not life-threatening. Dad's just upset and lashing out." Relief flooded me, followed by anger at my father's manipulative framing. He made it sound like she might not survive the night. Natalie sighed. "You know how he gets, especially when it comes to you choosing career over family." I stayed up all night, alternating between refining my presentation and checking for updates on Mom's surgery. By morning, emotional exhaustion had left me hollow-eyed, but strangely calm. I showered, dressed in my most professional suit, and headed to Black Tech headquarters with a strange sense of detachment. Bradley presented first, delivering a safe, conservative growth strategy. The external candidate followed with flashy promises of aggressive expansion. Then it was my turn. Standing before the board, my father's words echoed in my mind. Asterisk, "You're no daughter of mine." Asterisk. For a moment, panic threatened to overtake me. Then something shifted. If I wasn't their daughter in their eyes, I was free from the weight of their expectations and disappointments. I delivered the presentation of my life. Not as Olivia Parker, perpetually inadequate daughter, but as Olivia Parker, visionary business leader. I outlined revolutionary approaches to supply chain management, strategic partnerships that would position Black Tech at the forefront of emerging markets, and employee development initiatives designed to cultivate the next generation of innovators. When I finished, the boardroom remained silent for several beats. Then Robert stood, applauding slowly and deliberately. Others joined until the entire room echoed with approval. 3 hours later, Robert called me to his office. The board members were gathered, their faces unreadable. After careful consideration, Robert began formally, then broke into a rare smile. "The board has unanimously selected you as the next CEO of Black Tech Solutions." Applause erupted again as Robert extended his hand. "Congratulations, son," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You've earned this through sheer brilliance and determination." In that moment of professional triumph, my phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Asterisk, "Mom out of surgery. Stable. Dad still fuming you're not here." Asterisk, two worlds irreconcilably separate, each demanding entirely different versions of myself. The announcement of my appointment as Black Tech's youngest ever CEO, and one of the few female CEOs in the industry, generated significant media coverage. Business journals highlighted my rapid rise and innovative approaches. Industry publications analyzed what my leadership might mean for supply chain technology evolution, and local Atlanta news featured profiles emphasizing the hometown success story angle. I had barely processed the whirlwind when my parents suddenly took intense interest in my career. The same day my appointment made the Atlanta Business Chronicle. My mother called from her hospital recovery room. "We always knew you were destined for greatness," she said, as if the previous decade of dismissal had been a collective hallucination. "Your father and I were just telling the nurses about your brilliant business mind." The abrupt revision of history left me momentarily speechless. "That's not how I remember it," I finally said. "Oh, we've always supported your choices," she replied breezily. "We just worried like parents do." My father took the phone. "We're incredibly proud, Olivia. I've been telling my colleagues about my CEO daughter all morning." The conversation continued in this surreal vein, with my parents recasting themselves as my longtime champions. I ended the call feeling disoriented, as if gaslighted about my entire upbringing. 2 weeks later, they appeared unannounced at my office, bearing childhood photo albums and stories suddenly reframed to showcase my entrepreneurial spirit from the beginning. "Remember when she organized that neighborhood car wash?" my father asked my executive assistant while waiting in the reception area. "We knew then she had leadership potential." I ushered them into my office, struggling to reconcile these beaming, proud parents with the same people who had spent years undermining my confidence and choices. My mother hugged me tightly, something she hadn't done in years. "We brought pictures for a profile they're doing on you," she explained, opening an album. "I thought they might want childhood photos of our little CEO." The lunch that followed in the executive dining room was excruciating. My parents performed enthusiastic support for an audience of my colleagues, recounting stories of my childhood achievements they had actually ridiculed at the time. My father told the company COO, "We always knew she was destined for greatness," with such conviction that he seemed to believe it himself. Throughout the meal, I maintained professional composure while internally cataloging each historical revision. Every anecdote they shared had a shadow version, the true memory of their actual reaction that contradicted their current retelling. After lunch, walking them to the elevator, I finally broke. "What exactly are you doing?" My mother blinked innocently. "Supporting our daughter, of course." "Mom." I kept my voice low but couldn't contain the intensity. "After years of dismissing everything I've worked for." "That's not fair," my father frowned. "We've always wanted what's best for you." "What was best for me was parents who believed in me," I replied, "not ones who only showed interest when my success became public enough to reflect well on them." My mother's expression hardened. "We've driven 3 hours to celebrate with you, and this is how you respond? With accusations?" "They're not accusations if they're true," I said. "You never believed in me until now." The elevator arrived, momentarily pausing the confrontation. Once inside, my father jabbed the lobby button aggressively. "We've always been supportive in our own way. It's not our fault if you couldn't see that." The doors closed on their defensive expressions, leaving me trembling with decades of suppressed emotion. Tyler found me in my office afterward, staring blankly at the Atlanta skyline. "They're rewriting history," I told him. "Suddenly they've always been my biggest supporters. It's like they genuinely don't remember how they actually treated me." "They remember," he said gently, "but acknowledging the truth would mean admitting they were wrong. Some people simply can't do that." Over the following months, I established clear boundaries. I limited contact to scheduled video calls. I declined invitations to family events where I knew I'd be put on display as evidence of their excellent parenting. I focused instead on implementing my vision for Black tech, finding genuine fulfillment in the challenges of leadership. 6 months into my tenure as CEO, we had already increased quarterly profits by 22%. My supply chain innovation platform had been successfully deployed across our global operations, generating industry buzz and new partnership opportunities. Robert, though retired, remained a valuable mentor and friend, occasionally appearing for lunch to offer wisdom or simply share pride in my accomplishments. When the Atlanta Technology Association invited me to deliver the keynote at their annual conference, Robert insisted on attending. "Wouldn't miss it for anything," he said. What neither of us anticipated was my parents also deciding to attend, apparently having seen the announcement in a business publication. My speech focused on resilience and innovation, the importance of persevering through failure and skepticism. As I scanned the audience, I spotted my parents in the third row, nodding enthusiastically. as if my words validated their supportive parenting rather than indicting it. Afterward, at the reception, Robert approached them before I could intervene. "You must be incredibly proud," he said, extending his hand to my father. "Olivia is the most brilliant business mind I have encountered in 40 years. We always encouraged her natural talents," Dad replied smoothly. Robert's eyebrow raised slightly. "Interesting. She's mentioned having to overcome significant family skepticism about her career path." The uncomfortable silence that followed was interrupted by the arrival of several industry leaders, eager to speak with me. I navigated the conversation professionally, but the tension remained palpable. When the crowd thinned, I found myself alone with my parents, Robert having tactfully withdrawn. "That man had no right to suggest we weren't supportive," my father said immediately, his face flushed. "He was only repeating what I told him," I replied. "The truth." "Your version of the truth is skewed by oversensitivity," my mother countered. Something in me finally snapped. Years of swallowed responses and diplomatic evasions gave way to raw honesty. "My version is reality," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You dismissed my dreams from childhood. You funded Natalie's education fully while making me work multiple jobs. You skipped my graduations. You called my career a phase and a hobby until it became successful enough to reflect well on you." My father started to interrupt, but I continued, years of hurt crystallizing into clear articulation. "I succeeded not because of your support, but despite its absence. I built this career while you were busy telling me to be more like Natalie. The only difference now is that my success has become too public for you to ignore. So you've revised history to cast yourselves as supportive parents." My mother's eyes filled with tears, but whether from genuine remorse or the discomfort of confrontation, I couldn't tell. My father's jaw tightened, his default response to being challenged. "If that's how you choose to remember things, we can't change your mind," he said stiffly. "I'm not asking you to change my mind," I replied. "I'm asking you to acknowledge reality. We can't have an authentic relationship if it's built on a fiction you've created." They left shortly afterward, the air between us thick with unresolved tension. That night, I sat on my balcony with Tyler, watching the Atlanta skyline shimmer with possibility. "Do you think they'll ever acknowledge the truth?" he asked, his arm around my shoulders. "I don't know," I admitted. "But for the first time, I'm okay either way. My worth isn't determined by their recognition of it." I leaned my head against his shoulder, feeling strangely liberated. The confrontation had lanced a wound that had festered for decades. Whether it would ultimately heal or sever the relationship completely remained to be seen, but at least the poison of unspoken truth had finally been released. 6 months into my CEO role, Black Tech was thriving under strategies that balanced innovation with sustainable growth. I had assembled a leadership team that complemented my strengths, implemented policies that improved employee retention, and initiated partnerships that positioned us for long-term industry dominance. The professional validation was deeply satisfying, but the personal landscape remained complicated. After our confrontation at the technology conference, communication with my parents lapsed into strained monthly calls. They maintained their revisionist version of the past, but with less conviction, occasionally allowing cracks in the facade that hinted at potential self-awareness. Natalie, surprisingly, became an unexpected bridge. Her divorce finalized, she was rebuilding her life with more authenticity than I had witnessed before. When James left, he had shattered not just their marriage, but her carefully constructed perfect image. In the rubble, she seemed to be discovering her actual self. "I never really wanted to be a doctor," she confessed during one of our increasingly frequent calls. "I just wanted Dad's approval." This revelation created a new connection between us. During a weekend visit to Atlanta, I helped her explore career options better aligned with her genuine interests. She had always loved design and organization, talents subsumed by family expectations. When I suggested corporate event planning, something sparked in her expression. "I could actually see myself enjoying that," she said wonderingly. I introduced her to Black Tech's events director, who offered Natalie a chance to assist with our upcoming client conference. Her natural talent for creating seamless, elegant experiences immediately shone through. By conference end, she had job offers from 2 attending companies. "You saw something in me that I couldn't see myself," she told me afterward. just like Robert did with you. The parallel wasn't lost on me. While helping Natalie find her authentic path, I was indirectly healing my own wounds, breaking the cycle of prescribed expectations that had constrained us both. Meanwhile, I had begun working with Dr. Melissa Chin, a therapist specializing in family dynamics and childhood emotional neglect. These sessions helped me untangle complex feelings about my upbringing without minimizing the genuine hurt. Your success despite lack of support is remarkable, Dr. Chin noted during one session, but acknowledging the pain doesn't diminish the achievement. Those conversations helped me understand that forgiveness wasn't about excusing my parents' behavior or pretending it hadn't affected me. It was about releasing the anger that kept me tethered to the past, preventing full engagement with my present. 3 months after our confrontation, my mother called on a Sunday evening, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I read an article about you," she began, in Business Weekly. "You mentioned Mrs. Garrison as your childhood inspiration." I waited, unsure where this was heading. "I didn't realize she taught you accounting principles," Mom continued, "or loaned you business books. You never told us." "I tried," I said quietly. "You weren't interested." The silence stretched between us. Finally, she said, "I may not have listened as well as I should have." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the first acknowledgement of failure I'd ever heard from her. Later that week, she sent an email with an attached article about female entrepreneurs, accompanied by a simple message. "This made me think of you, Mom." These small gestures accumulated gradually. My father struggled more with admitting mistakes, his pride and self-image too intertwined with his perception as the perfect father. But even he began making efforts, awkwardly asking questions about my work during video calls, visibly concentrating to understand concepts outside his medical expertise. Healing wasn't linear or complete. Some family dinners still ended with tension when old patterns emerged, but increasingly there were moments of genuine connection, tentative steps toward a relationship based on who we actually were, rather than who they had wanted me to be. At Black Tech, I established a mentorship program for young women in business, particularly those interested in technology and operations. Each time I met with these bright, ambitious women, I saw reflections of my younger self, hungry for validation and guidance that my parents couldn't provide. "Your biggest obstacle won't always be external," I told them during our kickoff event. "Sometimes it's the voice inside that's internalized every doubt others have expressed about your potential. Learning to trust your capabilities despite that voice is the true challenge." Robert attended that event, watching proudly from the back of the room. Afterward, he embraced me with uncharacteristic emotion. "You've surpassed every expectation," he said. "Not just as a business leader, but as a human being capable of breaking cycles rather than perpetuating them." When my parents finally attended a company event 6 months later, the dynamics had shifted subtly but significantly. My father stood awkwardly in the corner, clearly uncomfortable in an environment where his medical credentials carried no special weight. My mother made earnest efforts to understand my work, asking questions that revealed genuine interest rather than perfunctory politeness. During dinner, my father cleared his throat after dessert was served. "I've been thinking about some of our conversations," he began, his eyes fixed on his water glass. "When you were growing up, I had very specific ideas about success, medicine, law, predictable paths I understood." He looked up, meeting my gaze directly. "I was wrong about you. Not seeing your potential wasn't your failure to demonstrate it. It was my failure to recognize it." The admission, clearly difficult for him, hung in the air between us. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand briefly. "Thank you for saying that," I said simply. That evening marked a turning point. Not complete healing, but an honest acknowledgement of wounds and a mutual willingness to build something healthier moving forward. 2 years into my CEO tenure, as Black Tech's market position strengthened and my leadership style matured, Tyler proposed during a weekend hike to a mountain overlook. The same man who had supported my ambitions without question, who had held me through disappointments and celebrated victories, now asked to formalize our partnership. "Yes," I said immediately, laughing through happy tears as he slipped a simple, elegant ring onto my finger. When I shared the news with my parents via video call, Their congratulations seemed genuinely happy rather than performatively enthusiastic. My mother asked thoughtful questions about wedding plans without imposing her preferences. My father inquired about Tyler's thoughts on work-life balance, seemingly having finally recognized this as a legitimate concern. "We'd like to host an engagement dinner," Mom offered tentatively. "Something small with family if you're comfortable with that." I agreed, setting clear boundaries about timing and expectations. The dinner itself was surprisingly pleasant. My parents made visible efforts to engage with Tyler beyond superficial conversation, genuinely interested in knowing the man who had supported me when they hadn't. After dinner, my father pulled me aside, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "I want you to know," he said hesitantly, "that while I still don't understand much about your industry, I'm incredibly proud of who you've become. The strength it took to pursue your path despite our lack of support. That's something I've come to admire deeply." The acknowledgement, so long sought and finally offered without qualification, settled something restless within me, not erasing the past, but perhaps allowing the future to be unburdened by its weight. At our final family dinner before Tyler and I returned to Atlanta, I shared news of Black Tech's planned expansion into European markets. For the first time in memory, my parents listened with genuine interest and asked insightful questions, treating my career with the same respect they had always accorded Natalie's. As we prepared to leave, Mom hugged me tightly. "We got so much wrong," she whispered. "Thank you for giving us a chance to get some things right." Even now, the journey from dismissed dreams to vindicated vision had been longer and more painful than it should have been. The wounds of parental disappointment may never completely heal, but they had transformed from raw, defining injuries to manageable scars that occasionally ached but no longer limited my movements through the world. What I've learned is that validation, while sweet when finally received, cannot be the foundation of self-worth. True freedom comes from building your life according to your own blueprint, not one handed to you by others, even those who claim to want the best for you. Sometimes the people who should believe in you most will believe in you least. And that painful reality doesn't make your dreams any less valid or achievable. If you're watching this from a place where your ambitions are dismissed, your path questioned, your potential doubted, know this: no one else's vision for your life matters more than your own. The journey may be longer without support, the climb steeper without encouragement, but the view from the summit is all the more magnificent for having reached it on your own terms. Have you ever had your dreams dismissed by those who should have supported you? Or found unexpected champions who believed in you when others didn't? Share your story in the comments below. Subscribe if you'd like to hear more journeys of resilience, and hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most powerful validation is the kind you give yourself. Thank you for listening.